Yep. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Megan Morse, and I want to welcome you to Softvision Suite's product webinar. This month, we are focused on Hotlists and how to best utilize the reporting within the application. So before we get started, just a few opening slides here. This is our customer success team. We're the ones that run these monthly webinars for you and are focused to help spread system knowledge and best practices. Please feel free to reach out to any of us directly or using the customer success email to ask any questions. So before we get started, just a reminder, everybody will be on mute to reduce background noise. So if you'd like to interact or ask questions throughout the session, please use the Q&A window located at the bottom of your screen. A recording of this webinar will be made available on our YouTube channel as well as our support site, so you can access that later on. All right, so I'll hand it over to Janine to get us started off here.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. All right, so our hot lists are what we consider your go-to tool in the planning world. These hot lists are used to proactively manage your understocks to prevent back orders, as well as manage overstocks. We have several hot lists, as you're aware. I've got a snapshot here of the dashboard. There are three of the product hot lists, the SKU hot list, and the suggested requisition hot list are all elements on the dashboard where you can launch directly into these hot lists. And I was thinking, since we do have additional hot lists for transferring and expediting if you're a multi-echelon or suggested purchase order customer, we don't have those available on the dashboard, so I have put that as a request in with development, so hopefully that will come soon. So we do have hot lists for vendor if you want to manage by vendor. If you happen to have a large vendor base that you're managing, you might want to use the vendor hot list in conjunction with a product and or SKU hot list. As I mentioned, we do have a transfer hot list for our multi-echelon customers. We have suggested requisition hot list for those that have suggested purchase order, as well as an expedite hot list for the SPO customers. The premise behind the hot list is so that you're managing by exception. We want to be able to help you prioritize your workload. So if you have a SKU and product intensive business, we want you to be able to utilize these hot lists to get to those products that need your attention immediately. And as I said, it helps to prioritize the workload. With the hot list, you do have the option to customize various views. So you do have the different column layouts. There's multiple tabs on the hot list for different views that you want to consider, as well as many filters. And we'll be showing you those, especially when Stuart does the live demo. And now I'll pass it back to Megan. Okay,
thanks, Janine. So as Janine mentioned, we are going to utilize those hot lists to really focus and prioritize your daily tasks. The three main hot lists that are available to everybody are the vendor, product, and SKU hot lists. So the vendor hot list is most useful if you want to focus on a particular vendor, maybe evaluate their inventory position. You might have an upcoming vendor visit or evaluation that you're doing. So utilizing that hot list will allow you to quickly evaluate each specific vendor. The product hot list, definitely one of the more popular hot list here, is going to allow you to identify your high priority products. Definitely useful for products with a large SKU count. So you can address each individual product and any kind of shortage or overage that you might need to address with your inventory. The SKU hot list allows you to bring that focus down to the SKU level. So if you are more interested in managing your exceptions by color and sizes, you can focus on the SKU list to do so. The hot list parameters. So these parameters are going to help to determine the calculations for your hot lists. With regards to your planning horizon, we have three parameters. One is the planning horizon factor. And then we also have your planning horizon min and max. So the factor is going to be the value that is multiplied by your product's lead time to determine that planning horizon. You can then also enter in a min and max, which will override the factor calculation above. The short-term weeks parameter, so this is helping to calculate the short-term required units. So what is the accumulated back orders in the short term? This defaults to 4 with the option then to adjust that value over to the right-hand side. You also then have the option to adjust the calculation for your net needs. So this will be calculating that net need over your entire planning horizon using the short-term planning horizon parameter. This is also defaulted to 4, but as you can see in the screenshot here, we've made that adjustment to 1. So it's going to calculate that product's lead time plus this 1 additional week for the short-term net need. Okay. In terms of sorting and grouping, so this is what you're really going to utilize to draw out the hot list insights and pinpoint those items that need your attention. Sorting on any of these columns here is really going to be based off of what is your biggest concern. So if you're, for example, more concerned on where you're accumulating shortages or back orders, you'd want to sort on your short-term required units, which is what we have sorted here on the screenshot. So this is going to allow me to quickly pinpoint those items that I need to reorder or address any of that short-term back orders that you may be accumulating. Instead, if I'm more concerned about my high demand items, so those items that are my best sellers, I want to make sure they're in a good inventory position for the future, I may want to sort on my future demand and work through my list that way with my high demand items. Another sort option that users use often is the first reorder point. So this is going to indicate to you directly when you should be placing a reorder. So this is taking in the product's lead time into consideration and then presenting to you how many weeks ago should I have reordered this product. So for example, the top 2 items here should have been reordered 12 weeks ago, which is indicated here with that -12. So sorting, or we also have the grouping option, which is available on any of the green fields. So you can drag and drop them into the group section so that you can start to organize and aggregate your data. Using those in combination with your sort by is really where you're going to start to draw out those insights and determine what are those items that need your attention based off of your inventory needs and concerns.
Okay, so when you go into the product hot list or SKU hot list, you'll see a series of tabs down at the bottom. So most people are like, do I have to look at all of these tabs? So what we typically recommend is that you pick 2 to 3 tabs that you're going to use on a regular basis. Because you can customize the data elements and the flow of the columns, you do have to do that each and every time you go onto a new tab. In order to save it. So that's why we recommend going ahead and picking 3. The 3 that we typically recommend for you to use are the short-term required units, which gives you the ability to review the back orders that you have and are accumulating and to determine your purchase needs. Now, this works great for most products that have a relatively short lead time. So if you are doing a lot of imports and bringing in products that have a long lead time, you might want to use the long-term required units. Both of these required units or required cost tabs always reflect the back orders that you're going to accumulate. So it's one thing to remember. The other tab, which is popular and that we recommend when you're managing overages, is to look at the overage cost tab. In my previous life, whenever we were talking about needing to purchase and back orders, we always talked in units. But when you talk about overstocks, you typically are more concerned about the cost or the cost dollars that involves. And then the other tab that I don't think gets used as frequently as it could is the all products tab. This is a great tab to use to review for upcoming offers to make sure that you've got in stock for all of the products that you have that are in that offer. And you can sort where you can see Stuart's circling around. Up at the top, there's a source filter. So right now it's set for all. So it'll pull all of my current active offers. You can actually go in there and select a specific offer or a series of specific offers in that filter. As well, the other filters that are up on the top tab of this hot list pretty sure they're all the same on all of these tabs. You've got the ability to filter by the scheduler. You can, even if when you come into a product or SKU hot list, you still have the option to filter it by vendor if you choose to. If you're multi-echelon, you could specify a particular warehouse, and then we have your status codes, never outs, drop ships, that sort of thing. So those are all pretty common. All right, so how do I understand the data that I'm seeing on the hot list? So here we've got a great illustration to show you where the data is coming from that you see on the hot list reflected in the materials planning screen. So up on the top is the lead time. So your lead time is always in red, and one of the things that is critical is that your lead times are as accurate as possible, because that is truly what the hot list is looking to at first is your lead time. So the first available week that I'd be able to get any product into my warehouse would be in week 6. So my short-term net need that I would see on the net need tab, if I'm using that, would be the 1350. If I look at my short-term required units tab, which is the one that's controlled by the parameter that Megan had mentioned, shows lead time plus whatever that parameter is set to. Our parameter is set to 4. So it's going to look at week 6 through 9. So the value of 2392 would be the short-term required units that I would see on that tab, because it incorporates my accumulated back orders up until that point in time. Your long-term net need is looking out to the end of the planning horizon. So in this indication, it's showing that I have a -6, so ultimately I have an overstock on this item at the end of my planning horizon. And then my long-term required units, again, looks out to the end of the planning horizon at all accumulated back orders up until that point in time, and gives me a value of 2,648 units. And that would be reflected on the long-term required units tab. When you're managing overstocks, one of the things that I think is another option that might not be utilized as much is building a library of liquidation codes in the administration module. When you're working these overstocks, you can determine different activities or events that you're flagging these products as to how you're going to minimize that overstock and hopefully alleviate the overstock. Whether you're putting it on the internet for clearance, you're sending it to a jobber, you might even have a liquidation code that you know that you've been able to get the merchants to promise they'll put it in another future book to try to get through it. But this is something that would be helpful. Again, you can group by these liquidation codes. You can run reports against the liquidation codes, but it's a nice way to compartmentalize where the product will be going. And then another way to manage on your hot list, in the SKU hot list, you do have a never outs flag. So if you indicate and check the never out flag on these products, you could then group by this and manage. And obviously a product that you've marked as a never out means you want to review them on a relatively frequent basis, so that you are making sure that you definitely have enough on hand, you have enough on order, has the product been forecasted out far enough in advance for you, etc. All right, back to Megan.
All right, thanks, Janine. So just to go over a few additional hot lists that are available depending on the modules that you have. Starting off with the suggested requisition hot list, which is included in our suggested purchase order module. This is the hot list that's going to help with improving purchasing efficiency as well as lowering your overall inventory carrying costs. So based off of various methods and rules that you'll define, this hot list will provide you with a listing of requisitions that we are suggested based off of the setup. So then the user can start to work through this hot list, for example, maybe prioritizing based on reorder date so that they can work through their list. And then from the hot list, they have the option to create a requisition, or what most of our users commonly do is they'll use the right-click option to use this as a jumping point to move from here to the vendor order review screen so that they can further look up the requisition details and the methodology used. Our expedite hot list, this is also included with the suggested purchase order module. This is going to help you with identifying any requisitions or current on order that you have that would benefit from having a receipt date moved up versus ordering more. So what is required is that you must be using the expedite weeks functionality within SPO for this hot list and recommendation. But then what this will do is it's going to give you a smarter way of just optimizing your on order versus in bringing more from that vendor if you already have something on the way. The last one we're going to review today is the transfer hot list. So the transfer hot list is included with the echelon clients. So clients that are utilizing multiple warehouses and store locations. What it do is it's going to now recommend the transfer orders that should be sent from the warehouse to the store location based off of that store's or location's demand for the items. So this is great for managing any kind of store replenishment off the methodology that is set up. So it will be using rules-based automation similar to what the SPO module does, and just recommending where and when you should be filling in your inventory needs, any kind of protection or location fill that you define. You also have the option of defining that transfer order directly from the screen or get the SPO module to look at it in more detail. So with that, I'll then hand it over to Stuart to bring a live screen demonstration.
Thanks, Megan. This is Stuart, and we're going to look at the hot lists and a sample dashboard. The hot lists are in the master scheduling module. You could see up here in planning in this first section, these hot lists. They're also available as dashboard elements. And we went through the elements in the last webinar. So if you didn't attend it, you could go to YouTube and you could review that. So you are able to add the hot list information here. But we usually go directly into the hot list from master scheduling. The first is a vendor hot list. And I'm going to go in here and hit retrieve. You could set any of the hot lists for auto retrieve. In that case, it will come up automatically when you click into it. Now, the vendor hot list is good for seeing roll-ups at a vendor level. It's good if you wanted to see a lot of information. The only thing is it does not show you the products here. It will show you the roll-up, and if you double click on a vendor, it'll take you automatically to the product hot list and fill in that vendor. So I don't know if many people use the vendor hot list. Usually they go directly to the product hot list. The other thing is, because the products aren't here, there's no status filters here. So I'm going to go straight into the product hot list and click retrieve. And then we'll go through some of these filters. You could filter by scheduler to bring in a particular scheduler, or a scheduler could be here, one of these fields, one of these columns that's here. You could filter for a particular vendor or all vendors. You could filter by a warehouse, let's say a particular warehouse. These statuses, new, in process, and done, this is something you could set within the hot list, excuse me, but this does reset every day when you get a new hot list. So you could use it if you think you're going to get through your hot list that day, but if you don't, then a lot of people don't use that. They use instead the next review date. And again, next review date's where you could put in information to review at a later time. And we have different filters for that. Here, these next review date items, you could exclude them from your hot list, only look at ones with next review date, or select all. Dropship items, most people exclude this from the hot list. You're not really making purchases in most cases, but you could go in here and actually see that if you wanted to. The source filter, I'll show you in a few minutes when we go to the All Products tab. The product status is where you could select your active based on the indicator, that you have set up in Softvision, and then that would be your active statuses. You really don't want to look at discontinued or inactive items usually to buy. Now, not every company, a lot do, but not every company interfaces product status. They have it at a SKU level, so they have SKU status. In that case, the product status that shows here would be the status of the first SKU. Because again, we have to use something. So for those customers that aren't interfacing product status, you may want to go to the SKU hot list. You get a more accurate reading, basically, of those statuses. But the product hot list is great, especially when you have a large number of SKUs, for being able to go in there and see your needs at a product level. Now down here, you see the hot list data. So if we go to the view menu and we go to customize, you could customize the different columns here. There's a lot of information that's available here, including some user fields, some other fields. What you want to do is go in and select the columns that you want to see without making it too long. And you could always click here and add or remove different ones that are here. Once you do that, you could do a save as, and you could save it as a particular layout. Okay, and then anyone could come in and use that column layout. These are the columns that we recommend. You may have different ones, you may not need as much, but we definitely want to see vendor name. More people are used to seeing vendor name than actually the vendor number. First reorder is the lead time, basically, was based on the lead time and when these should have been reordered. So you could see here is these should have been reordered 10 weeks ago in order to satisfy, your inventory position, to satisfy your back orders. Category you could have or not have, description. If you right click here, you could freeze a column or unfreeze a column. Product status is good to have, number of SKUs. And then we have the inventory position. So you could visually see your inventory position by looking at your surplus and deficit. So your surplus is your on hand. In this sample dashboard, we don't have anything on hand, unfortunately, but you would have on hand inventory. Your PO units is your surplus. So what's your deficit? Your deficit is your future demand and your beginning back order. So you could take a look and see some of these items. Here's a particular item. 2,000 units are coming in, but my future demand is 31,988. So I definitely, just visually looking at this, you could see that there is a need for this, okay? And here's where we looked at the different columns. Short-term requirement units is your accumulated back orders. Short-term net need is what you need to buy. As a net need shortage, I need to buy this 14,152. And then you have other things like long-term. Long-term is always at the end of the horizon. So let's remember these numbers and go into materials planning, because it's good to understand where these are coming from on the hot list. The accumulated back orders, you only see at a SKU level and also at a warehouse level. So I'm just going to take a look at this one particular warehouse. So you see here, my net need is 14,152. And we had our parameter set for 1 week after lead time. This is when I'm going to be making the buy. So that was also on the hot list. That was our 14,152. Our accumulated back orders was 4 weeks after lead time. There's that 27,860. So again, you could set that parameter differently. You could set both of them differently. But a lot of times it makes sense to set that net need 1 week after lead time, and the required units, those accumulated back orders, maybe a few weeks afterwards. So we recommend those 4 weeks. You're looking at your needs 4 weeks afterwards. One other thing to take a look at is the lead time. So you see here the lead time is 10 weeks and the horizon is 40 weeks. So that's based on our parameter setting. And I'll show you the parameters in a minute. So in security, you could set up your parameters. There's a lot more parameters. I filtered by the master scheduling module, and I filtered by these particular ones. So again, our factor is 4. You could change that if you wanted to, but basically 4 times lead time seems to work. That was 10 weeks. That went to 40 weeks in the horizon. But these will override it. So let's say you had a 2-week lead time. Your horizon would be 8 weeks, but it'll be 16 because we set a minimum. So you may want to set a minimum regardless of your lead time. You may want to look at least 16 weeks. It's the same with the maximum. If my lead time was 20, my factor would be times my 4 would be 80. I'd see 80 weeks, but my maximum is 52. That'll default to 52 weeks. Our suggestion, if you have long lead time products, keep this at 104. I think you could even go further. And then minimum, work at least 16 weeks. But again, that all has to do with your settings. All right, let's take a look at another item. So we said requirement units are accumulated back orders, but you also might have something, and I'm left clicking to sort, and you could always sort on any of these. So you see this product. Here I have 235,000 PO. My future demand is 233,987. I have enough basically for my demand. I have no net need units, but I do have requirement units. So let's double click and take a look at why this is on the list basically, and why we include those accumulated back orders. And we'll look at a SKU level. And you could see that these accumulated back orders, here's my, where is it? Yeah, here's my new back orders here. So we show you these accumulated back orders, even though you don't have to buy anything, we have these requisitions. In your system, they'd be POs usually. We have these POs that are here that we hopefully could expedite. Call the vendor, try to get those in. We're always in the hot list trying to reduce back orders and potential back orders. The way to do that is to look at current back orders, your requirement units to see if you could bring in earlier any of those POs, and also your net needs. So that's the difference between the requirement units and the net needs. If you have a net need, you will always have a requirement unit, okay? But in this case, you could see you have a requirement unit without a net need. So for doing buying, it's good to use this tab. Some customers say, I just want to know what to buy, you know? So in that case, you would go to the short-term net need. All right, now I'm going to explain the difference between net need and net need shortage. There's a possibility that you might have something at this is at a product level. So it could be that you have a mixture. Here we have 5 SKUs, but you may have some that you need to buy, and you may have some that's overstock. So you could see our overage is 1122, our shortage is 237. If we net that out, we would be in the negative. We'd have minus 900. This product would never be on the product hot list. So what we do is we take the absolute value of these. This, though, doesn't make any sense. We really, 1359 is not something that we're going to really look at or buy. That's why we look at the short-term net need shortage. So that's a column that you bring in on the product hot list. On the SKU hot list, you just need to look at net needs because it's at a SKU level. But if you have a mixture of SKUs, some you need to buy, some are overstock, always bring in the short-term net need unit shortage column. And I'll double click and you can see in this example where we have shortages and overages. So here you see our total shortage is 237, our total overage is 1122. And you can see that we need to buy the small and the extra large. And by the way, you have abilities, some users use this to do color coding. So if you go to view, if you don't have it, it's showing there. I don't know if you can see it as good here, but if you show the color coding, you'd be able to visually see the lighter yellow is what you need to buy, and the darker ones are your overstocks. All right. We spoke about the vendor hot list, and then coming here, I like to come here, and a lot of customers do that, to look at it by vendor. So you could, by the way, you could click and drag and move some of these around if you wanted to, like that. You could also group. So it's a good idea to group by vendor name. And if you do this grouping, this will be remembered when you go out of the hot list and come back in. So here I am grouped by vendor, and I could see my whole grouping at the vendor level. I would then want to sort. So if, let's say we want to look at net need unit shortage, I could right click and sort descending. Okay, so these are the vendors that I have to concentrate on. These are the ones that have the shortage. If you filter here by vendor, you wouldn't use this, but this is good to come in here and see all your vendors. If you open up the plus sign, you could see the individual products for each of these, or you could click the asterisk. That'll open it up for all of them, basically. And what I would do here is, this is the one that I need the most. I would double click and go into materials planning, and then I would do my buy. I would do my what ifs, create my requisitions or actions, and then I would hit next. And that'll take me to the next one on the list. So you could keep working down. It'll keep working down for that vendor and then go to the next vendor. You could do done and next. That means on your hot list, it'll automatically be selected as done. Okay, I'm going to go to the overage cost because we spoke about cost. I'm going to retrieve that. So you see here the rank. This is ranked by cost, by this overage cost. We could take a look and see. In some cases, we don't have future demand. We have PO units and no demand. In that case, maybe it was dropped. You could cancel the PO. Maybe it's something you want to put in a future book, you know? And so that's a decision you'd have to make. You could also use these liquidation codes. And I'll show you where these are set up in the dashboard. If you go to administration, master scheduling, oh, it's right there. Liquidation. So you could go in here and add your own codes, whether it's jobber, whether you're going to sell it on the web, whether you're going to do a transfer, whether you're going to redline it, sell it on clearance on the web. You could just add new ones here, whatever you wanted to. And then those show up on the hot list. So I could go in there at a product level and go in and select these. And the reason this is called minimum liquidation code is because you might have different ones set up at different levels. So when I'm talking levels, I'm talking SKU. So if I go in and double click here, see here your liquidation code. You could actually see it if you right click and you go to column layout and customize. You could bring that liquidation code that's there. So these are going to be redlined. If you go down to a particular SKU in the miscellaneous section, you could see red liquidation code. So you could set this differently. So minimum is just showing us one of the liquidation codes that's in the product. But again, you might be changing this at a SKU level. And so this is where you would come in and maybe make a change here. But to do it at a product level, do it easily by the hot list. And just do it in the product hot list. All right, let's go to the All Products tab. So here we want, this is every product set up for the schedule, let's say. You can see the status on the bottom, number of records that are here. If you go to source filter, you could select a particular offer, and you could select the division, year, and offer. You could also select multiple, and it brings you here. And people that work in reports or in DRS may be used to this as the offer filter. You could go in here and select different offers that are here. You could also select by season. if you had your season code set up. So you could select it that way. And then go to home and accept, and then retrieve. Now again, this offer filter, you could do it in any of these tabs, for this upcoming book, what's my inventory position? But I like to check for these offers coming up. Where are we? Where's our on hand? In this case, not too good. But what's my on hand? What's my future demand? It's good using all products to see the inventory position of everything in that offer or offers that are upcoming. So that's where you would use the source filter. It defaults to all, basically, to give you all that's there. I just want to point out one thing. Let me go in and bring in another offer. Your future demand, your future demand is not just for this offer. Your future demand is your total future demand, okay? This way, even though you're filtering, these are the products that are in these offers, but you're on hand, everything else, including your future demand, is for all offers. So it's basically giving you an inventory position. We really do need to see the future demand for all offers to make sure. There is one place you could see the demand just for a particular offer, and that's in the DRS report, VDRS SKU hot list by offer. And in that DRS report, which is at a SKU level, that will show you the demands for that particular offer or offers that you're selecting. All right, I'm going to go back to the SKU hot list. And again, you might want to work the SKU hot list for your requirement units. There are a number of different tabs that you could bring in. You can bring in product ID, SKU. You could bring in your descriptors. If you wanted to group and sort by descriptor, you could do that as well. And then here you see show never out. So this is available on all these tabs, okay? And this will save from session to session. So sometimes we've had customers who say, hey, where's my hot list isn't showing everything. It's because they had this checked. But you could go in here and you see now I have my 1132. For my never outs, similar to looking at the future offers, I really want to look at the inventory position of my never outs. So here in the all SKUs tab, I'm going to just look at my never outs, which is these 26 records. Again, without this checked, you check all SKUs, depending on how much, it may run for a while. But it's good on the all SKU tabs to look at it. So these are the ones that you could see your inventory position. These are the ones that you designate as never out. And the way where you designate that is in materials planning in the miscellaneous section. So here I'm going to one particular SKU and I'm going to set never out, okay? And you could set it either at a SKU level, or if you go here to the product level, you could set the never out. It'll show you the number of never out SKUs. And actually on the product hot list, there's a column for number of SKUs and number of never out SKUs. So you would be able to quickly see it. So again, these never outs are good to be able to set, to go in there and review those items that you want to make sure that you're always in stock on. The other tab here is the kits tab. I don't know if many people check in this, but this will show you all your kits and the inventory position. You have the option to select future demand only. In other words, show me the kits that have a future demand. We'll show you the kit and then the SKU. So if you open this up, it'll show you the component quantity and the different SKUs underneath. And then you could go in there and review these in materials planning. But this is just a quick view of your kits and SKUs. All right, I'm going to go to the other hot list we spoke about, the SPO hot list, suggested requisition hot list. This will show you, for those who have SPO, all of the suggested requisitions. And here you could see it's grouped by vendor and also by order date. If you expand this, you could see the information underneath. You could see the SPO coverage method applied, and you could see the quantity here. I think if you right click, I can't right click here, but you could create the requisition directly here. So if I go in here and select this particular one, I could create the requisition. Either manual, it'll bring up the requisition screen, or auto, it'll just automatically create the requisition. Most people click on this and then go to vendor order review because they want to be able to go in and review these requisitions. Okay, so that's the SPO hot list. The expedite hot list will show you those items that are set for expedite. So we set up expedite to say, if I have a PO coming in a few weeks after my suggested requisition, I want to account for that. I don't want to buy that. And so that's where you get this expedite. And it is set up in SPO. So you could see here, here's an expedite quantity. If I right click, you could see adjusted SPO details. The suggested quantity was 268. We adjusted it to 256 because we took out those 12 units that are coming up. We set the weeks to include here as 30. That's a little too far to do it. I would suggest you do about 8 weeks. You don't want to look out for next season's purchase orders to say, I don't want to buy now because of those. But you may want to look at the next 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to say, I want those included or not included. If you right click, you could see the PO details for the entire PO. That'll give you that information. Or you could go to materials planning. If you click here, that'll take you to the vendor order review screen. And then you could see your expedite week settings. There's that 30 we used. And the expedite list that's telling us, hey, go in there. We didn't create requisitions for these quantities. Try to get these in sooner. Okay. And you could see that if you double click to go to materials planning, you see that in yellow, those expedite weeks. Okay. So you see here's your SPO units and your adjusted SPO units. And you could see those details. We included those 6 units in the analysis, which makes sense. You may not want to buy more here if you have something coming in. But again, don't set this out too far. Okay, so this is good. So you do have that expedite information to be able to go to the vendor and say, hey, go in there and do it. You may also see plus marks here. These check marks, this tells you that there's other requisitions or POs out there in addition to this one. And we'll show you that information that's here. And the last hot list that we're going to go through is the transfer hot list. So for those multi-echelon customers, you go in there and see what you want to transfer. And so this will come up. You could expand this. You could see your allocated quantity, your on-hand quantity. You could right-click to see your allocated transfer details. This will show you the suggested quantity and the allocated quantity. So, and again, you could come here. If you click on it, you could create the transfer order directly. So if I do that, it'll just come up with the transfer, or you could right-click to transfer order review. Similar to the SPO hot list. SPO hot list, you could create the requisition directly or go to vendor order review. Transfer hot list is the same thing. You could either do it directly or come back there. I might have a lot of transfers. This may take a little bit to load. There it comes. I do have a lot of transfers there. Okay. Any questions that anyone has? If there's any questions, if not, I'm going to go back to the slides.
Yeah, nothing's come through.
Okay. All right, let's go back to the slide. Here you see best practices. Again, this will depend on your business, but we recommend reviewing those out of stocks, the product or SKU hot lists, that short-term requirements tab. Use the product for reviewing large SKU counts and the SKU for accurate status and more detail. Do that daily. Review your never outs in the SKU hot lists. Check that never out checkbox and review that daily or weekly. Overstocks, look at overcost. Use those liquidation codes to categorize. I didn't show you, but you could actually group by those codes to see the total overstock cost in each of those vehicles that are coming up. And also the liquidation codes are a field in our hot lists, either the product or SKU hot list reports. So in the DRS report, the SKU hot list reports has those liquidation codes. Product hot lists, all products, review the inventory position of upcoming offers. Go into materials planning or vendor order review if you have SPO. Validate and save, or validate and hold to review or for approval, do that as needed. And then in dynamic reports, look at those VDRS scheduled receipts. So you could contact the vendors for those critical purchase orders that you need. I'll hand it back to Megan.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stuart. Okay, so starting to wrap up here, just a reminder that if you have not registered yet, now's the time to register for our user conference this year, or well, next year in 2020. It will be in February, the 2nd through the 5th in Orlando, Florida. So it's a great opportunity for you to not only network with peers that are on the tool, but also network with our Softvision team. And we always encourage to have some representation from each of the clients there. So if you have any questions or need more details, reach out to your CSC and we can provide you with that. On the registration site, there's also details on the event and the agenda, so you can check that out before you sign up. Okay, so we'll just double check here. It's been a quiet session though today. No questions have come through. So nothing else comes through at the moment. It looks like we'll wrap up here. Next year, so this is our last webinar of the year. So we'll start this back up again in January next year, and we'll focus on publishing process in our offer versionings, and that will be scheduled for January 22nd. All right. So we'll wrap it up for today. Again, thank you all for joining us, and we wish you guys a happy holiday and a happy new year.